Good afternoon. The board meeting of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and its component units is now being called to order. Today's in-person meeting is also being held virtually via teleconference, with the proceedings live streamed from the Port Authority website. On October 12th, the Committees on Finance and Operations met jointly in executive sessions. Earlier today, the Committees on Finance and Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management met in public and executive sessions. Their reports will be filed with the official minutes of today's board meeting. The Commissioners also met in executive earlier today to discuss matters involving ongoing negotiations or reviews of contracts or proposals, matters related to the personnel or personnel procedures, and to discuss and act upon matters related to proposed, pending, or current litigation or judicial or administrative proceedings. We're going to start our meeting today hearing from our superintendent. We have some somber news to discuss. We've lost one of our employees at the Port Authority. Ed, you want to give us some of your thoughts and talk about what we've lost and what it means to the agency?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman, Director, Commissioners. I'd be remiss if I did not mention it's been a long 2 months in the agency and the police department with some losses and incidents that have greatly impacted us, not only as a department, but as I said, as an agency. I also would like to thank the chairman, the director, and the commissioners, and host of others for reaching out to some of the folks that were impacted by this. First one on October 20th was Police Officer Miguel Carrera Rodriguez, who was involved in a pretty tragic crash at the George Washington Bridge, where while he was reporting to his post, his vehicle was struck by a motorcyclist, and that resulted in catastrophic injuries to the person that struck the officer. The officer went to the hospital. He sustained some injuries, and I know, Chairman and Director, you spoke to him, and I thank you for that, for reaching out to him.
How's he doing? You know, I had a conversation. It seemed like he was a little in shock. He was doing okay. How's he doing now?
Yes, sir. He's doing okay. Like I said, minor injuries, and then the emotional aspect of dealing with, the result of the accident is certainly weighing heavy on his mind, but we're keeping a good eye on him, and Dr. Fisher is keeping a good track on everything. The second one would be on September 25th. We lost Sergeant Grace Nelson after a battle with cancer. Sergeant Nelson spent 20 years in the department. She was assigned to the Central Police Pool after she graduated, served at PATH, World Trade Center, Newark Liberty Airport, and later where she ended her career as a sergeant in the PATH. She received a medal for meritorious service in March of 2004, and in 2015, the Papal Breast Bar. She's survived by her husband, Mark, and again, I thank everyone for their condolences and reaching out to the husband for the loss and the loss to the agency, so I thank you, sir.
I ask if everyone stand for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That is greatly appreciated. As I said, the constant caring and communications with the men and women of the PAPD, and they know the support that the chairman, the director, and the board gives them. So I thank you for reaching out to these folks. Lastly, and more importantly, while we're here today, as you know, in last month's board meeting, the chairman requested that I research a way to honor Police Officer Anthony Vivero, whom we tragically lost this year on September 11th. I reviewed Officer Vivero's impressive service record and the deep, meaningful commitment to his local community. And based on my findings, I'm here today to recommend that Police Officer Anthony Vivero be awarded the Robert F. Wagner Distinguished Service Medal. Anthony was born and raised in Staten Island, New York, and he lived a remarkable life where his successful baseball career began. At St. John's University, he was a two-time Big East All-Conference Team Countrywide Baseball All-American and made the Dean's List in 2005. He was a 12th round draft pick in Major League Baseball, drafted by the Seattle Mariners, and in 2011 he had joined the Atlanta Braves, where he truly had a breakthrough year, leading the team in bullpen innings in a playoff season. After the Braves, Anthony moved on to and finished his baseball career with the Boston Red Sox. Although an accomplished Major League Baseball pitcher, Anthony did not put his community aside. He devoted his spare time to volunteer work with young kids who aspired to one day be just like him. He exemplified community service as he mentored kids at the Snug Harbor Little League, where he later became the Little League president. In 2015, after 6 seasons of professional baseball, Anthony voluntarily retired and fulfilled his lifelong dream of becoming a police officer. He often expressed his desire to work along the brave women and men and pledged an oath to never forget the events that occurred on September 11th of 2001. In 2016, Anthony graduated from Port Authority Police Academy. He began his police career at the World Trade Center. He was an exemplary officer engaging with the public and improving his police skills by attending training on and off duty. He was awarded the Excellent Police Medal for outstanding performance while apprehending a perpetrator who was wanted for a pattern of larcenies at the World Trade Center. Additionally, due to his experiences and dedication to helping others, Anthony was selected to assist and improve recruitment efforts in the police hiring process. Anthony's hard work did not go unnoticed. From a comprehensive pool of police officers, he was selected by myself to become an instructor at the police academy. He impacted police recruits by teaching them tactics and survival skills necessary to perform their duties, as well as in-service training to active members of the department. In 2021, he was instrumental in the inaugural Citizens Police Academy, providing information to members of the community and creating a positive interaction with police relations with the public. Furthermore, he was influential in the agency's first Youth Police Academy, educating high school students on the field of law enforcement and fostering positive relationships with law enforcement officers. All these qualities exemplify the finest traditions of the Port Authority Police Department. As you can see, Anthony's dedication to duty and service made him a role model to kids, police recruits, and his co-workers. I recommend the Robert F. Wagner Distinguished Public Service Medal due to the fact that the medal is awarded by the Board of Commissioners to an individual who has rendered distinguished service to the Port Authority and its public. Unfortunately, in the tragic events that Anthony passed away on September 11th of 2022, en route to serve the 21st commemoration of the September 11th anniversary, he is not physically here with us today, but he will continue to be recognized as a role model police officer, husband, and the father he was. For his actions in service to the Port Authority and the community, I recommend to the Chairman, Director, and the Board that Police Officer Anthony Vivero be awarded this medal for displaying excellent judgment and professionally representing the Port Authority's highest standards. Chairman, Director, and Commissioners, based on the descriptions I just stated, I recommend that the Board award Police Officer Anthony Vivero the Robert F. Wagner Distinguished Service Award. And as you know, we are joined here today with his wife, Carrie, for this event.
Thank you, Superintendent Kerry. I'm sorry you're here. But, we talked about Anthony at great length last meeting. He's always going to be part of our family, as you and I had the discussion, Kerry. You and your 4 kids, you're part of the Port Authority family. We will take care of you and your 4 children the rest of your life. Anthony, as the instructor, as the police officer, as one of our own, has taught us all about what public service is all about. And I talked to one of his colleagues when he was assigned to the World Trade Center as one of his earlier duties. He felt like he was really home. That's why he wanted to come to serve here at the Port Authority. So it is with heavy heart, Carrie, that you're here, but we feel that it was necessary to recognize Anthony's determination, his civic responsibility, and his contributions, because we're not going to let him go. I promise you that. I told you that last month. The Robert Wagner Distinguished Public Service Medal is only given the folks who have served a minimum of 15 years with rare exception. Well, Anthony was that exception and is that exception. So we've discussed it with the commissioners and the executive director and the superintendent, and is with heavy heart and great pride and admiration and love that I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation from the superintendent to award the Robert Wagner Public Service Medal to Anthony Vivero. Here a second. May I roll call, please?
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Gary's a yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
So at this time, I'd ask the superintendent to come before us. Carrie, if you can, I ask all the commissioners and the executive director to come before the dais, and we can award officially, carry the Medal of Honor to be passed onto the family. But on another note, last month we lost another of our family members, Latoya Galloway, who had been employed by Port Authority in our tunnels and bridges as a toll collector for the last 5 years. Was a frontline employee for her entire life and took great pride in her service. And again, I ask for if we can stand for a moment of silence for the passing of Mrs. Galloway. Thank you. All right. Our next order of business is we are approaching within 2 days the 10-year anniversary of the Superstorm Sandy, and our engineering department and manager, Josh DeFlorio, will review the progress to date with regard to the restoration and repair of our facilities and long-term mitigation efforts that have since been implemented. Before we hear from Josh, just want to jot a few notes down. We talked about Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy 10 years ago. So for those people who don't remember, this is really came front and center here to the Port Authority and to New York and New Jersey. Superstorm Sandy claimed 233 lives. 38 people from New Jersey died, 43 from the city of New York City, 53 from New York State. In New Jersey, over 2 million households at the time lost power, estimated of $30 billion, which was unbelievable, unmatched by any other storm that we had seen in New Jersey. Sandy had destroyed or damaged 350,000 homes, 30,000 businesses. The high winds and the storm and the runoff destroyed over 113,000 trees and literally left 2.7 million New Jerseyans without power. We lost water systems, we lost sewer systems, and it sank 1,500 boats. In New York, 305,000 homes were destroyed, mainly because of the high storm surge. In New York City alone, the floodwaters entered the homes of more than 443,000 people and 24,000 businesses. Economic losses in New York City alone were pegged at 19 billion, 32 billion statewide. The subways were flooded, our paths were flooded, our assets were flooded. The stock exchange was closed for a number of days. There were ravages and effects that went on with the storm that we had never seen in many, many, many decades. In the following years, we've received several $billions to help rebuild New York, New Jersey. We have tried to create a resiliency and a redundancy that would try to ward off or prepare for any future superstorms, Sandys, or storms in the like. So we're going to ask Josh to walk us through what we've seen in the past and how we are preparing with the monies received and the planning received to make sure that we try to avoid these catastrophes and calamities in the future. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your remarks. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Executive Director Cotton. As the Chairman said, I'm Josh DeFlorio. I am Chief of Resilience and Sustainability in the Port Authority's Engineering Department. And before I begin this presentation, I'd like to acknowledge the innumerable Port Authority and PATH men and women who were there during the storm, valiantly protecting our assets, keeping our customers safe, those who did the yeoman's work of cleaning up and recovering in the immediate aftermath of the storm, and of course those who in the 10 years since have rebuilt and rebuilt much stronger. And those are the true heroes of this story. Many of them are here in this room today, many more obviously at our facilities, in our departments, and really I tip my hat to them. It's with a great debt of gratitude and thanks that I offer this presentation to you today. So let's move to the event itself, going back to 2012, going back a decade, to October 29th, 2012 specifically. So Hurricane Sandy was barreling up the East Coast, And although it made landfall in New Jersey, it wasn't even technically a hurricane. It was an unprecedented storm surge, and it had unprecedented damage and devastation to our region. As Chairman O'Toole mentioned, it was broadly devastating, costing an estimated $60 billion in damages across the region. Now, speaking of 10 years ago at this moment, my Port Authority colleagues would have been mobilizing for this event. They had made robust preparations. They knew this was going to be a big one. But this was an unprecedented event, and these preparations proved, unfortunately, to be largely inadequate. And the Port Authority, therefore, suffered about $3 billion in damages, and every line department in the Port Authority was impacted. So at PATH, which suffered the lion's share of the damage, we had extensive damage to tunnels, equipment, and signals, substations, and rolling stock. In aviation, all Port District facilities were inundated. We had significant debris impacts across our facilities. You can see this image of LaGuardia Airport, and you can hardly tell where Flushing Bay ends and the aeronautical area starts. This was about 100 million gallons of brackish water. Tunnels, bridges, and terminals. Although the Lincoln Tunnel was fine, actually, and continued operations, the Holland Tunnel took on over 20 million gallons of brackish water, and you can see in this image the floodwaters cascading down the staircase of one of our ventilation buildings. At our port facilities, the facilities were littered with debris and watercraft. We lost about 14,000 cars from tenant facilities as well. And last but not least, World Trade Center, which of course was a construction site at the time, that was inundated with over 125 million gallons of seawater. So here we are a decade later, flash forward, how time flies. And it has been a decade of action. And I stand before you today to say with confidence that we are far more resilient than we were 10 years ago. We are much stronger. And this is in large part because the Port Authority has embarked on a very aggressive physical risk mitigation program. And although, as you might imagine, resilience at the Port Authority is a many-splendored thing, here are a few highlights I'd like to touch upon. I'm going to go into greater depth on each of, no pun intended, on each of these during the presentation itself. We've implemented over 80 flood protection measures, which we call priority protective measures. These were largely in place by the year anniversary of the storm and fully implemented by 2013. We've spent over $2.1 billion on Sandy recovery and storm hardening projects to date. We have implemented much stronger design standards for all of our projects in current or future flood zones. That's since January of 2015. We have a major new focus on mitigating the risks of intense precipitation, since Hurricane Ida taught us a lesson in 2021. And we have launched, also in 2021, a proactive climate risk assessment initiative that focuses on uncovering and mitigating the risks to our existing assets. We have also evolved as an organization. The Port Authority continues to improve our resilience programs and our policies with support of an independent third-party reviewer. So the first chapter of our story, which is a short one, but one that needs to be told, is the implementation, the very rapid implementation of 80 priority protective measures across our portfolio by the end of 2013. And as I mentioned, a vast majority were in place, had been installed by the one-year anniversary of the storm. And this was rapid action to ensure that we would not be in a similarly compromising position should a strong storm whip up in the 2013 hurricane season. Fortunately, they were not needed for that purpose. And as you can see at the left with the Teterboro lighting vault, some of these priority protective measures are in place today, serving their purpose, but many of them have been superseded. By design, these were temporary measures, a sort of stopgap until we could implement a more robust program of permanent measures. And in that way, the priority protective measures really were a preamble to the larger story, which is the over $2.1 billion that the authority has spent on recovery and resilience since Sandy across all of our line departments. And as you might imagine, this program includes many projects of merit. We don't have time to go into them all. I've chosen 3 highlights. At LaGuardia, you see Pump Station 6 here. We have elevated the substation 10 feet off the ground. This is to prevent the interruption of power to those vital pump stations. The pump stations as a whole, in fact, have the capacity of evacuating over 400,000 gallons of water per minute. And if you think about that, That is almost an Olympic-sized swimming pool every 90 seconds. At World Trade Center, we have implemented a 3-layer flood protection system, starting with this deployable flood wall, what we call the bollard protection system. This leverages the security bollards already in place at the facility to build a perimeter protection. This is coupled with at-grade protection measures and below-grade protection measures, including an enhancement of pumping capacity. And then PATH, as I mentioned, which was the most significantly impacted of our line departments during Sandy. We have executed flood resilience measures across that portfolio, and you see here a very visceral example of one of those measures, a steel submarine flood door at the Hoboken station, which once it swings shut and you spin the wheel, it makes that station impenetrable to floodwaters, and therefore floodwaters don't cascade into the station, down to the platforms, and into the tubes as they did with Sandy. Now, a pivotal part of the Sandy investment program, of this massive investment, is the Sandy capital plan. There are 72 projects in the Sandy capital plan, totaling $2.5 billion in projected total spending. Now, this is, and once again, we can't go into each and every one of these 72 projects, although all of them are meritorious. This is an attempt to informally summarize how we're investing this money by category, by project type. So about $2 billion of this money is going to asset replacement and rehabilitation. This is really restoring our facilities, not just from the immediate damage of Sandy, but also from the effects of latent salt damage which persist to this day. And you can see the general breakdown there is that the almost $1 billion is actually going to the restoration of very sensitive electrical, mechanical, and communications equipment. So this includes everything from substations to signals and switches on the PATH system. About $684 million is going to what I call civil infrastructure. This is restoration of tunnels, replacement of track, replacement of pavement. Next, about $225 million going to the restoration of buildings that were damaged during Sandy. And last but not least, a little over $100 million going to restore our vertical transportation system. These are the elevators and escalators upon which our customers depend. Now, to continue further on the pie chart on the left, $450 million almost of this investment is focused on flood protection, on making our assets significantly more resilient, on limiting the infiltration of floodwaters into our facilities, protecting our most critical assets, which includes rolling stock as well. About $19 million is focused on what I call redundancy, so generators and the like. $73 million are just too difficult to classify here. They're of various natures, but the point that I want to make is that all of these measures that we're delivering are designed to withstand the 100-year storm, plus an additional robust margin for future sea level rise. And that's because they adhere to our climate resilience guidelines. So since 2015, we have had stronger standards than required by local codes and national standards. We implemented this guideline in January of 2015, and we applied them to all new capital projects as long as they are in a current or projected future flood hazard zone, as well as major redevelopment projects. And if you'll bear with me, the illustrative example at right, you can see how we set this standard, how we require our protection. So we start with the 100-year flood level. This is, in fact, more scientifically known as the 1% annual exceedance probability elevation. That means roughly that there is a 1% probability in any given year that we will exceed that elevation. That is specific to our sites. That is specific to the location within our facilities. So we take that as our starting point, and we add a safety factor or a buffer. This is also called freeboard in the industry. This would be required by code for a building. And the amount that we apply depends on how critical the asset is. It's either 1, 2, or in rare cases 3 feet. A very critical asset like a substation or a facility of public accommodation would definitely get 2 feet of freeboard. But here's the Port Authority difference, and this is why we call our approach Code Plus. So on top of that, we add an additional factor, an additional margin of safety to accommodate projected future sea level rise. And this is up to 3 feet, depending on the expected asset lifespan, so the expected useful life of the asset. If we are delivering an asset that we expect to last to 2100 and beyond, we go to 3 feet. If we're lower than that, if we have an asset that we expect would require replacement in 2050, we adhere to a slightly lower standard there. The sea level rise projections that we use are scientifically based. They are leveraging the best available projections that we have for our region. One other point that I'd like to make about these guidelines is that they, and one of their principal strengths, is that they are not prescriptive. They are about establishing criteria, but they give flexibility to our design teams to deliver effective and cost-effective flood mitigation measures. And a member of my team participates in each of these design processes. Speaking of which, how do we know that we're actually executing the standards that we've put in place? Well, as you might imagine, this is an essentialized four-step process. There are lots of stops along the way in a design and project delivery process. But first and foremost, we determine the applicability of these guidelines to a given project. And for that, we assign a climate resilience specialist from my office. That individual performs an in-depth analysis of the project. But the crux of this analysis, the key question that they ask is the asset that we're about to deliver in a current or projected future flood zone? If the answer is yes, then we set design criteria. We establish what we call the design flood elevation. And again, that's the 100-year flood, a safety factor called freeboard, and an additional increment for sea level rise projected in the future. This becomes the design criteria for the project, and it is integrated into the basis of design, really the governing documents for that design process. A member of my team participates in the entire design process from preliminary design and alternative analysis all the way through final design, every milestone review along the way, and all of the quality checks that that entails. And then, of course, we need to make sure that what we've designed is actually implemented in the field, that we're getting what we pay for, so to speak. So in construction, especially if it includes a specialized flood control device, we will work with the fabricator to ensure that the flood control device meets our standards. We will often send engineers into the field to witness the testing of that fabrication. We will have the fabricator and installer warranty their installation at our facility. Our resident engineers at the facility verify this through inspections and testing. They ensure, once again, that we get what we pay for, and their verification is crucial to the final acceptance of the project. So now, we've gone through the last decade in a real whirlwind. It's fair to ask what's next in the next 10 years. And despite the very significant progress we have made since Sandy, and I'll reiterate, we are much stronger, much more resilient than we were 10 years ago, we can reasonably expect that residual risks remain. Hurricane Ida was a great reminder of that. This indicates that Sandy did not reveal all of our vulnerabilities. We cannot be complacent. We cannot rest on our laurels when it comes to resilience. It's not a set it and forget it activity. Mother Nature and climate change will ensure that. We can also, with reasonable certainty, predict that new risks will emerge during the coming century due to climate change. So our robust response is, in 2021, we launched a climate risk assessment process, which is a proactive process to look at the risks of climate change now and in the future all the way to 2100 on our existing assets, looking at the existing enterprise and portfolio. And this looks at the following climate stressors: sea level rise and storm surge, which, as you might imagine, are kind of our bread and butter after Sandy, but it adds intense precipitation and extreme heat as well, both of which have the potential to impact our facilities. This is a granular engineering-based analysis, and what it seeks to identify is all at-risk critical assets in our facilities, Port Authority assets, critical tenant assets, and even external connections. So substations, for example, owned by utilities, or access roads to our facilities. We also seek to quantify direct and indirect consequences of inaction. So what would the projected losses be if we don't act, if we don't mitigate our risks? And this helps us understand what's truly at stake so that we can mitigate those risks. Speaking of which, this process involves the development, conceptually at least, of mitigation measures to respond to our highest priority risk, and I fully anticipate that many of these projects will sooner or later go into the regular design process. The overarching objective of this initiative is to inform our strategic investment priorities, to provide information to those who are putting the capital plan together, and also to aid with the pursuit of grant funding for our projects. The assessment portion of the climate risk assessment will be complete by the end of 2023, and as I mentioned, it will serve as a basis for additional meaning above and beyond what we've done since Sandy, and very aggressive resilience action. So now as I round into the home stretch, obviously the core and the crux of this presentation has been resilience, which essentially is about defending our assets to the progressive threats of climate change. But I think it's imperative that we look at the other side of the coin as well and acknowledge the need to significantly reduce our own greenhouse gas contributions to global climate change. In my opinion, morally, you can't do one without the other. So the next decade will certainly have a laser focus, feature a laser focus on reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. And in that vein, I would like to thank and applaud the Board of Commissioners for establishing our net zero commitments, our commitment to reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. I would also like to thank Executive Director Cotton for his tireless pursuit to ensure that we're accountable to those standards and given the urgency that we are making good on these commitments. The Port Authority staff thinks that these are very worthwhile commitments, and we're working hard to ensure that these commitments become a reality. And with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Exceptional presentation. And just so we're not mistaken, our executive director is laser focused on those net zero. We've heard that when before it was cool to talk about climate change and net zero. He was talking about this in 17 and 18. So appreciate that recognition. We're going to start with the video, but I figure I want to walk through your program first, Josh. I think we're going to finish with it's a 4-minute video that has in real living color what we experienced in 2012. Ben, can we roll that?
On October 29, 2012, Superstorm Sandy made landfall in the New York and New Jersey region, battering both states. It was the deadliest, most destructive weather event to hit our region in recent history. 98-mile-an-hour winds drove record-breaking 14-foot storm surges over the tip of southern Manhattan. An estimated 2.5 million people lost power throughout the New York City metropolitan area alone. Most Port Authority facilities, its bridges, tunnels, ports, airports, and the PATH rail system are located along waterways that surround the New York-New Jersey harbor. These facilities bore the brunt of Sandy's high winds and monumental storm surge. Given the proximity of the Port Authority's 3 major airports to water, aviation staff braced for the worst at the airports. At LaGuardia Airport, Sandy sent 100 million gallons of seawater from Flushing Bay pouring onto the aeronautical area, shuttering flight operations for 3 days. The water inundated LaGuardia's airfield, as did dangerous debris left behind by the storm surge.
In any emergency, whether it's a snowstorm or a hurricane for that matter, we always stress to our people that we have 3 major responsibilities, and that is to protect life, preserve property, and get back to business as soon as practical.
Sandy wreaked a special kind of havoc on the Port Authority's PATH transit system. Water flooded miles of PATH's track and submerged 57 passenger cars.
We had the iconic classic picture in Hoboken where the elevator shaft was compromised. So the water from street level poured into our station. Someone likened it to a waterfall. We had an event in Hoboken where we had 6 feet of water in one part of Hoboken that the water just wouldn't go away. The pumps just didn't work. We had somebody go in that tunnel to assess that pump.
Nobody else could do any work until the water was out of the tunnels. So the main objective was to get that pump running. So the electricians, the signal guys, the track guys, all the other work could get done. They could dry the tunnels out and get in there and do their work. I made a decision that I was going to go under the water and turn the pump on.
First leg of the service came back in 8 days. Probably faster than anybody thought that it would be humanly possible, but people worked tirelessly.
While crews worked around the clock to restore PATH service, workers at the Holland Tunnel were pumping out millions of gallons of water and finding creative fixes to return at least limited service between New Jersey and Manhattan in the days following Superstorm Sandy.
The most crucial part of the recovery was getting the water out of the lower duct. We were able to get enough water out of there during the day to allow a limited bus operation because at the time the PATH system was closed, shut down, and the bus terminal was overwhelmed. Maintenance's attitude was get in, pump and dry, and they pumped 24 hours a day for the full 7 days until we were fully open.
In Lower Manhattan, Sandy required the repair or replacement of more than 1,600 pieces of essential equipment at the World Trade Center construction site. The storm surge brought 125 million gallons of water pouring onto the site.
Within a matter of minutes, the water rose from our ankles to our chest, and we realized it was unprecedented. And what exemplified that is when the cars started to float by us.
No one could have imagined the destruction of what we now know was the worst extreme weather disaster to directly impact public transportation in this country.
Gosh, great job. I wanted to finish on that note so people can see it and live in color and experience it after hearing your technical and excellent presentation. But that's as real as it gets, and I'm hoping we don't have to face that calamity in the future. So job well done to you and your staff.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, commissioners.
All right, this time we're going to turn to our executive director for his monthly report. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, Josh DeFlorio's report is really striking and hard to overstate both the impact of climate change and the importance of the Port Authority's preparations up to now and continued focus on the issue. I do want to turn to report on the agency's monthly operating volumes at our facilities. By and large, they are holding steady since the summer. The level of our airport passengers and the volume of traffic across our vehicle crossings have both been at or close to 2019 volumes. Now, domestic passenger levels at our airports have met or exceeded 2019 levels, though international passengers, in terms of volume, have lagged somewhat behind. At the seaports, September marked 26 months of record-setting cargo volumes. At PATH, weekday ridership has gradually risen to close to 60% of pre-COVID volumes, while ridership on the weekends at PATH has now recovered nearly to 2019 levels. This month, at the top of our agenda have been preparations for the opening of the new Terminal A at Newark Liberty. The terminal will be world-class from its airy, light-filled architecture, 21st century technology at check-in and security, its appealing and inspiring public art installations, to its New Jersey sense of place. The terminal opening will truly be something to celebrate. I also want to take note of the strong 9-month financial results that have been reported by our CFO. The agency deserves enormous credit. These results are a tribute to the efforts of all Port Authority staff across the agency. Indeed, as we reflect on progress and events across the agency, we continue to recognize and to thank our employees who ensure that the agency delivers on our responsibilities. And as always, we continue to thank the leadership of the 23 unions who represent the majority of our employees. Let me give you just some specifics from our operating volumes. For last week, that is the week of October 17th to October 23rd, which is the last full week results we have, passenger volumes overall at the airports were at 95% of their pre-COVID October 2019 weekly average volumes. Vehicular crossings during this week at our 4 bridges and 2 tunnels were over 2019 levels at 101% of the pre-COVID October 2019 weekly average, and at PATH ridership overall hit 58% of the pre-COVID October 2019 weekly volumes. For the month of September, volumes at the seaport were 35% higher than September 2019. And this does mark the 26th consecutive month of record-breaking volumes at the seaport. Despite record volumes, the time at anchorage, something we have tracked during the pandemic and focusing on supply chain issues, on average was less than 5 days. Overall, time at anchorage at the port has been consistently less than other major U.S. ports in 2022. A few more words on our efforts with respect to Terminal A redevelopment. It continues to make key progress, and it will open before the end of this year. This is the largest milestone in the current $5.5 billion Newark Liberty redevelopment, and combined with the award earlier this week of a contract to develop a full vision plan for Newark Liberty's future, this terminal opening is putting Newark on the track to becoming a best-in-class airport worthy of the region. And this progress is overall another step in the Port Authority's ambitious agenda to transform our airports into state-of-the-art, global standard, best-in-class facilities. 3 more quick updates. With respect to immigrants at the bus terminal, it appears in the last few days that Texas politicians have decided to slow down or stop sending buses of immigrants to New York. In the last 5 days, the Midtown Bus Terminal has only received 1 bus from the state of Texas and none from the city of El Paso. But I want to take note that from the beginning of August to this date, nearly 300 buses and more than 11,000 immigrants from Texas arrived at the Port Authority Midtown Bus Terminal. Now, at the terminal, they were met by New York City officials and nonprofit charitable organizations to welcome the immigrants and to provide intake and other services, including referral to shelters. But I do want to offer our collective thanks to the bus terminal staff who have provided logistical support for this effort. And we are staying in close touch with the city and state and will continue to cooperate with these authorities. Turning to another subject, on October 10th, the pro-Russia hacktivist group known as Killnet claimed responsibility for what is called a distributed denial of service attack against more than 4 major airport websites across the country, but it included LaGuardia. The attack at LaGuardia did not impact major airport operations. It did not access any data. And at LaGuardia, the LaGuardia website was restored in approximately 15 minutes, largely due to quick response by the Port Authority Cybersecurity Operations Center and new security protocols implemented this last spring. The Port Authority is working with our federal partners on an after-action review of this attack, and the attack has provided even further focus on upgrading our cybersecurity preparedness. Finally, I do want to take note that in early October, the Centers for Disease Control issued a health advisory about a recently confirmed outbreak of the Ebola virus in Uganda and announced the funneling of passengers on flights who were coming from Uganda and who had been in Uganda within the last 20 days to one of 5 international airports in the U.S., including JFK and Newark in our system. Passengers on flights who originated their travels in Uganda or with travel history from Uganda that land at JFK or Newark will receive health screening by personnel from the U.S. CDC. Port Authority security and administration personnel will support those federal agencies as they carry out these efforts, working cooperatively, in particular, with federal, state, and local health authorities. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remark.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions or comments from the commissioners for our Executive Director? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we are going to move to the public portion to comment. The public portion is limited to about 30 minutes, provides an opportunity for the members of the public to present their views directly to the board, but does not provide for a dialogue. Members of the public wishing to discuss a specific issue with the Port Authority staff should contact our Public Affairs Department, and we will follow up individually. We're asked that each speaker comply with a 3-minute limit. We have one speaker, Murray Bowden. Hey, Murray.
My new business card. Highlighted in red, it says global warming. It's the whole ballgame. Everything else is a subset. You set it up here today for me. I couldn't have done it better. It's only one problem. We talked here a couple of months ago about changing the road lines because it would make it safer. Even more so now because we're short truck drivers and they're using autonomous trucks. I wanted to see yellow on the left and white on the right. And you said, talk to the guys.
Talk to engineering, correct?
Nothing happened.
Okay. I was under the impression engineering was having a conversation with you.
They did. And then they stopped dead.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, I had an IMTIC meeting. The chair was the Commissioner of State of New York Transportation. I said, if you can't get your department to fix those lines, and they're illegal all over the place, we need a new commissioner. Right to her face. I don't know if she listened, because it was on Zoom, so you can't tell. Which is why I'm standing up here. Because everybody knows you're hearing it directly from me and not on Zoom. I'm 89, I'm gonna die soon. Everybody asks me how I am, and I have to say, you want the truth, you want a lie. Because the truth is, my mind's going. Early dementia. Hey, I talk about it. I also talk about the fact that I read lips, and to understand what you all are saying, I have to see your lips. And you know how many people tell me I have the same problem? And then when you get to something, you for Verizon?
Used to be.
Used to be?
Yeah.
I had an issue with them recently, and we did it on chat and emails because I can't hear. And one time I did, our wife had to translate for me. This is about the world going forward. I will not be here when it's finished. You will be. You committed yourself to see this gets done. It's a safety issue. It's a cost issue. Somebody has to go back to the original era and fix it. They've been using those lines for 50 years. They were designed for 50 years ago. The white lines at the exits were designed for Robert Moses when he built parkways, and nobody knew about yellow lines. And if you think that I'm comfortable standing here and telling you this, I am not. Who the heck am I to stand here and tell a chair of the Port Authority, it's your responsibility to see it gets done? Because my time's over.
Thank you, Murray. Appreciate it. Good seeing you.
Follow up on it.
Okay. On it. Thank you.
And one more thing.
Yes.
I couldn't have done this without instruction by dozens of people, some at the Port Authority, who taught me how to take care of things. To behave and not to embarrass somebody unnecessarily.
Thank you, Murray. Have a good day. All right, Jim, is there any other statements or videos that
There are
have been
none.
submitted? All righty, moving ahead to the voting items. As Chair of the Committee on Operations, I will now present an item under the board's, the committee's purview. That item approves a collective bargaining agreement with a Railway Independent Transit Union, which includes 21 PATH employees who supervise the inspection and repair of PATH rail cars. This agreement was ratified by the union members on October 18th, 2022. The agreement, among other things, requires the employees to contribute towards the cost of their health care insurance. And just as we had noted in executive, this will be the last, assuming we agree and pass the resolution. This will fill the mandate that Rick Cotton and I had laid down at the desk of this authority some years ago, that those 23 opened contracts and overdue contracts that were languishing for many years, past a decade, had to get resolved. I want to thank our negotiators and HR and Michael and Rick for making sure that this priority was attended to, and this is the last of 23. That's the good news. They're resolved, and the employees deserve to have a fair contract. And now that they are resolved, guess what? They are soon going to be brought to their end point where they have to get either an extender or a new negotiation for a new contract. But it's a proud day in many respects that for the first time in many, many years, past a decade, that we'll have 23 of 23 contracts resolved. Prior to making a motion for this item, I ask the corporate secretary if there's any recusals.
There are no recusals.
Any comments or questions? Motion, please.
So
Second.
moved. So moved.
Thank you, Gary. Second. Request for a roll call, please.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarber?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinotti?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Menendez?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
And Commissioner Cohen left a yes in writing. Thank you very much. Okay, that's approved.